Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Quiz. Today we are at the next topic and we are going to look at how to build an attack. We can see that some of the white pieces are already close to the king. So white has already started building up the attack. The pawn on f5, bishop h6, queen g3 are directly contributing. The reason white is about to win is that see the black pieces. Most of them are stranded on the last rank. The rook on d7 is not well placed. Bishop and the knights are mere defenders. The f6 and the g7 are the key points which black is trying to hold. And right now we can see that the white knight on d4 is hanging. We can see a splendid outpost on the square d5. White tries to improve his knights and he gets everything into the black king side. So there are some obvious moves. Since f6 is the point of interest for white especially, so white goes with the move nd5. See, sacrificing the knight on d4. The knight is given up time and again. Of course, here e takes d4 is outright blunder because there is the move f6. The knight can never take on f6 because qg7 mates. So bishop takes f6, knight takes f6 check, king h8 forced. The queen cannot take because of the rook, and now comes just the simple knight takes e8. Black has just lost the knight. He cannot recover the knight because of mate on g7. He cannot play gh because qg7 mates. And we see that the move rook g8 will also not hold because there are three attacks on g7. So bg7, rook g7, qg7 mates as well. So this position is losing for black. So ed4 is an outright blunder. Another option is the move king h8, getting out of the g5. But here too, white has f6. Similar idea, bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, and of course f6 cannot be taken because of mate on g7. There is g takes h6, and now white has knight takes d7, bishop takes d7 almost forced, and the knight jumps to f5. The squares d5 and f5 are fantastic outposts. Earlier I have made some lessons on outposts. Outposts are the square on an open file which is supported by a pawn. They should be near the center and on the higher ranks. This is also winning for white. So in order to stop f6, black had perhaps seen the move bishop h4, which is his best chance. He played bh4, white went qg4, keeping the attack on the bishop. Here too the move ed4 fails. Let's see why. After e takes d4, this time there is the move bishop g7. Now see, knight g7 forced and f6. These ideas are also very common. We sack on g7 and then play f6 to regain the piece. So bishop takes f6 forced. Now knight takes f6, king h8, and white has the very simple qh4, forcing the h pawn to move. After h5 there is qg5. We see that there is no defense to qh6, queen f6, then the queen is lost and white should win very easily. Also the line king h8, which looks very reasonable at first, fails similarly. bg7, knight g7, f6. This time the move f6 doesn't attack the pinned knight, but the h4 bishop is in trouble. But black can use knight e6, attacking the knight on d4. Here also white has the very strong rook f5. This move is very important. The point is simple. The rook is heading to h5 followed by rook h7. As you can see, there is no defense. Let's try to understand a bit. If rook g8, then just queen h4. Then whatever is played, there is rook h5. Rook cannot go to g7. If knight takes d4, this is the reason white played rook f5 first. Then knight cannot control f5 on the next move. And now see, still there is the move rook h5. We see that hardly there is any defense. After the move bishop f6, white can go qh3. When rook h7 would mate very quickly. Thus black avoids the move king h8 as well. Black played rook b7 in the game, taking his rook away and opening this bishop. So this was perhaps the only way to stop f6 because now bishop attacks the queen. Now white uses the other knight and he brings it into play. See, first comes bishop takes a6. This knight is the defender of c6 square. So now it's deflecting it. And the second point is if rook moves, then bishop c8, queen c8 and queen h4. The piece is lost. And this important bishop is eliminated. Now knight takes a6 and now the other knight's play is evident. Now see, the knight is heading to e7 very soon. Black went qd7, the queen is struggling for place, that was the only space available, and now comes bishop g7. Knight takes g7 forced as bf6 was the mating threat, and now qh4. It's actually time to resign. There are multiple threats. One is nf6 check mating on h7, other is the move knight e7. Black has two ways to stop f6. One is the move f6 which he plays in the game. Other could have been the move knight e8 guarding the f6 square. But here also white does everything by force. See, first gets knight f6, forcing knight takes f6, because if kg7 then qh7 check, king f6, qh6 is checkmate. I avoid playing all the moves because it is good to have little bit of imagination, little bit of thinking which would happen in our mind also. Knight f6 forced, qg5 check, king h8, queen takes f6 check. See, all the moves have come with check, kg8, and here see, king has no place, white has rook f3. The rook lift, very important idea, a waiting move when king has no place. Now see, rook g3 is unstoppable. At the most, black can go rook d8, but see, rook g3, king f8, queen h8 mates because e7 is guarded by the c6 knight. So here see, both the knights have played important role. Black plays f6 and now knight c e7. The d5 wants to guard f6 and the knight which was far away also joined the attack. Now if king h8, then there is knight g6 check, king g8, and these are the kind of moves generally we miss. See, queen takes h7 check, forcing king h7, knight f8 check, kg8, knight d7. Now rook cannot take because of nf6, bd7, knight f6 check. See, so much material is grabbed, king f7, knight d7, rook d7. As it is said, the dust has settled. But what has happened? See, rook for two knights, black has just 3 pawns, and look at white. White has 7 pawns. Means there are rook and 4 pawns for two knights, which is quite a lot. And that too here white plays the very strong g4, stopping knight h5, knight f4 ideas. And soon see h4, g5 and the collective advance. The king can come from h2, g3, g4. This would be one of his ideal plans. Play rook d1, stop the move d5, and then play h5, h6, push the knight away, use g6 and push these 3 pawns, and white wins very easily. If king f7 is played, then there is the simpler queen f6 check, ke8, queen takes g7. Thus black tried the only other move, queen e7, knight takes e7 and rook e7. If we look at the material, see, there are 2 knights plus bishop for the queen, but the king is not safe and white also has more pawn. White played rook d1, to which black decided to resign. He could have played a bit more. Let's say he would have played the move knight e8, but see, white will be able to bring his rook into play. Rook d3 followed by transferring the rook. Queen can go to h6, or else he can pressurize the square e6 with both his rooks, and white would eventually get the move g4, g5, which would open the black king totally. And see here, the 3 minor pieces are no match to this queen because the black king is very much unsafe. White also has the possibility of having a passed pawn on the queen side, so this position is winning for white. I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do let me know in the comments below. Thanks for your time.